Hello everyone, this is Cobalt. This is the next video in my character analysis series for Brawlhalla. Stick around till the end to hear about entering the giveaway to win community colors, emotes, weapon skins, sidekicks, avatars, or even the battle pass, and voting for the next legends. And if you want to skip all this and get straight into the information, there's a timestamp in the description, and don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up with the release of your favorite legend. In these analyses, I wanted to focus solely on the character's signatures. Light attack combos are covered much more in depth than I ever could elsewhere and function pseudo-comparably for all characters of that weapon class. So I'm not going to be discussing the general neutral of the character with their weapons unless it pertains in some way to their signatures. Firstly, I want to give clear descriptions of the terminology I'll be using. Startup frames are the amount of frames that happen after a move has begun until the first hitbox of the move becomes active. Active frames are the duration of frames that the move contains hitboxes that can collide with your opponent. FAF, or First Actionable Frame, is the first frame available where your character is able to move again after the move has been started. For all of this data, I use the character's jump to display the first actionable frame. Lastly, on miss refers to the move not connecting with an opponent, and on hit refers to the move making contact with an opponent. I'm going to be doing my analysis today on the next voted in legend, Gnash. And I know it's pronounced Nash, but for kicks I always call him Gnash, so I'll be referring to him as that for the rest of this video. So if that bothers anybody, sorry and deal with it. According to the lore, no one has been in Valhalla longer, meaning Gnash was the first legend in Valhalla timeline-wise. He was a caveman back in the day and was a brilliant hunter who competes and hunts fiercely. Gnash's weapons are spear and hammer. He has seen occasional competitive results, and both of his weapons are really solid in the competitive metagame right now. He has a really good stat distribution that complements his weaponry well. He has 7 attack, 3 dexterity, 5 defense, and 7 speed. He's a pretty quick character with good knockout potential and survivability, and both of his weapons are pretty solid. So, are his signatures beneficial to his kit in this regard, or do they make things harder on him? Well, let's find out. Let's start with his spear. Spear's side sig has 23 frames of startup, active frames from 24 to 29 with an FAF of 51. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Gnash leaps forward with a downward stab from his spear. The sig travels a decent distance, honestly, about half the stage, and has a decent startup given its travel distance. It has a below average FAF as well, offering this signature some reasonable coverage in front of him at a distance. It's a good burst option for punishing at a range, and can even have some potential edge guarding or ledge trapping potential thanks to its range. The sig gets spammed quite a bit since the FAF on it is so low and since it covers such a good range. Spear neutral sig has 18 frames of startup, active frames from 19 to 26 with an FAF of 49. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Gnash does a backflip a little above the ground and swings his spear high above him. The sig has above average startup but incredibly low FAF. It covers opponents jumping and those recovering high. Thanks to its low FAF, this sig can be used quite a bit as well, and is spammed quite a bit, honestly. It has a reasonable range on it and is pretty good at what it does. The hitboxes on it offer him a decent disjoint that catches above him really well. It's a solid sig in my opinion. Spear down sig has 30 frames of startup, active frames from 31 to 38 with an FAF of 63. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Gnash rolls backwards and then leaps forward and slams his spear into the ground in front of him. It's a passive sig thanks to the backwards movement of the sig, offering him a punish option for opponents trying to press the offensive. It doesn't have the best frame data thanks to the passive nature of the signature, but this doesn't prevent it from having reasonable utility. It just has a very niche amount of utility based on its movement. I see it frequently used on heavily aggressive opponents attacking at point blank range. Next up is his hammer. Hammer side sig has 20 frames of startup, active frames from 21 to 25 with an FAF of 47. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Gnash performs a large arcing hammer swing in front of him. The signature has about average startup and insanely low FAF. I'm saying that for a lot of these signatures, and that should be telling you guys something about why these are so heavily used. But it offers him really good coverage in front of him since the hitboxes on it are so sweeping and disjointed. It's got good utility thanks to this, and can even catch airborne opponents thanks to the sweeping hitboxes that arch above him. It's a solid sig in my opinion that I think provides him some solid utility and coverage. Hammer neutral sig has 26 frames of startup, active frames from 27 to 34 with an FAF of 50. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Gnash leaps upward and then swings his hammer forward. The sig also has startup well above average, but the FAF on it is rather low. It catches jumping opponents and those recovering high quite well. It has pretty low end lag, resulting in the FAF being much lower. It's got some good utility on his kit, and thanks to the large sweeping hitboxes has some solid utility. Though the disjoints on this sig aren't quite as good as his side signature, it's still not a bad sig at all though. Hammer down sig has 28 frames of startup, active frames from 29 to 38 with an FAF of 63. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Gnash leaps forward a long distance before slamming his hammer into the ground in front of him. It has a large landing hitbox and a hitbox that bursts whenever he slams into the ground. The sig has well above average startup thanks to the travel distance and above average FAF thanks to this as well. It functions well as a burst option at a distance and can punish opponents trying to come back from the ledge since it travels so far. Not his best SIG and has some of the weakest frame data on his kit, but it's still not bad considering its coverage range. So, overall, his SIGs are honestly pretty good in terms of their frame data. The startup on all of them is just okay or even well above average, but the FIF on most of these SIGs is so low that it makes them harder to punish, which I honestly didn't expect from a character with such low dexterity. I see the reason that these are spammed so much now. And the interesting thing about them is that the in-lag on most of these moves is just average, but the active frames on most of his SIGs is low enough to where the FAF on them is incredibly low despite the in-lag, making them more difficult to punish as well. These short burst active frames I thought would detract from his signatures honestly, because sometimes more active frames can lead to opponents being caught if they're unfamiliar with the length of the duration. But in spite of this, his SIGs are pretty solid, and coming off of a weapon kit like Spear and Hammer, it makes a pretty good and competitively viable character in my opinion. He has some decent skins, though I think most of them are used more so for comedic effect. He'll certainly see more competitive play in the future, I have no doubt. Today's code to put down in the comments is Dr. Stone, along with your Twitter handle or social media of your preference. And if you get that reference, I appreciate it. Also feel free to check out my Twitch channel. I'll be streaming this week doing 1v1 battles with viewers, so come say hello. The channel will be linked in the description down below. Tune in Monday for coverage on the highest voted legend from this week. Comment to vote for next week's 5 legends. This is the final video of the week, so I'll distribute the prizes to the winners and the poll will be closed later this evening, so be sure to get your votes in. I'll be continuing this once a day, Monday through Friday, over the next 10 weeks until all 50 legends are covered. So, thanks for joining me on this ride. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the release of your favorite legend, and hope to see you back for the next one. Once again, I'm Cobalt, and thanks for watching.